Yeah, my name is Ricardo Sosa, and I'm going to present this work called Food for Advanced Computational Thinking. This is a project we've done in the last few years with this team of my co-authors. That includes academics, researchers in the area of education, as well as practitioners, teachers, tutors at a makerspace in Manorewa High School here in South Auckland in Aotearoa, New Zealand. As part of this work has obviously been done here in Aotearoa, in the land of Maori. And as someone coming from Mexico, I can only start to visualize, get a glimpse of the complexities of working and living in a country with a colonial past, and one where a lot of injustices and structural problems that come from history and continue to be problematic in this era. As part of that, I identify myself as a learner of Te Reo Maori, someone who lives here and who benefits from the colonial past of Aotearoa. Part of that journey for me is to become more aware and better educated in Maori principles, Maori language, life, and philosophies. And this is one of the frameworks that are available for researchers developed by Maori, not only for Maori populations. So this project is not about doing research on Maori groups, but frameworks that come from Maori wisdom and are applicable to all of us, and in particular to people from the South Pacific who also live in Aotearoa and who are an important group in this area of South Auckland as well. So the project I'm presenting here is part of a longer partnership. Now it's been 6 or 7 years working with this high school. And it comes as part of a project that we got funding for in wanting to look at the digital technologies and Hangaro Matihiko curriculum by the Ministry of Education in Aotearoa. And this is, as many other countries, initiatives that the government sets up following the interests of big tech industry to increase the number and the diversity of tech workers in the coming years. So integrating digital technologies, computational thinking into the curriculum in all years of education, from early learning to university. So that is the context of this work. And we have been working since the creation of this makerspace, now 4 years ago, in Manorewa High School. And this is a fabulous group of people, tutors, teachers, and students who have been working on this, like building this community around a makerspace. And I'm going to say a couple more things about that in terms of our project. So the project seeks to understand and support what we are calling advanced computational thinking, and the practices around this that prioritize ethical, creative, critical, reflective, and community dimensions in this maker funnel, this maker group. And that's what we mean by advanced when we say advanced computational thinking. So it's not just the coding and just the technology, but how to use it from an ethical, creative, critical, reflective, and community points of view. So what we prepared in the paper, what we wrote about in the paper is this activity that we call Crackers. And it's an advanced computational thinking food activity. So through the use of food, the activity seeks to bring people together to reflect and to learn from each other about the uses of digital technologies and specifically computational thinking. So I'm not going to go too much into detail about this because the activity and how it connects with the project is explained in the paper in detail. So here what I wanted to do is spend some time telling you about the connections more specific between this particular project and PDC at large. So in terms of the background or the threads in PDC, that inform our work. We have things like participatory making by Sarah Valley in 2012 and 18, computational empowerment by Everson and his group, creative coexistence from this Brazilian group led by Schultz, and learning and infrastructuring by Ericsson and their group. And these are primarily Sweden, Denmark, and Brazil initiatives. What we are conducting in this project is we want to bring slowness to the forefront, blurring or integrating with the everyday practices of, in this case, the makerspace, the community. We also brought crit sessions obviously from design education, but we brought them as a research method or a research technique. The makerspace, although it happens in the school, it's an out of school time, it's an after school space. It does not have any connection to the curriculum, not explicitly, and it happens, everyone in the school are welcome, and students who join, they bring their interests and their passions and their projects to the space. And the adults in the space support that and often learn together with the students as well. We wanted to separate the computational thinking as a way of looking at digital technologies, using and engaging with digital technologies, and also beyond access. A lot of the work in this area tends to be about providing access of more diverse people, minorities, to tech. And we deeply feel that it's much more than just providing access to people. I'll go a little bit more in detail on that in the next slide. And we also want to make a contribution and continue to explore what Elizabeth Sanders calls bridging strategies from research to design. In some ways, I am the only trained designer in the team, but I see everyone in the team as designers. So I think that these are people who are constantly designing. The food activity of Crackers was slow in its design. It took a little while to design it. First, it took a few months of just being in the space. We wanted to start the project. This was a 2-year project. It was obviously extended because of COVID for almost another year. But it was always meant to be the first year. And this is, of course, we knew the space, we knew the people before, but we wanted to spend some months with regular visits to the space and getting to know the students, getting to know the projects and the space, getting to know better the teachers and the tutors, and wanting to be part of the community in our way. And we were very, very lucky, extremely lucky and grateful for the group for welcoming us in the space. And it's fantastic, has been a fantastic opportunity and privilege that we are very grateful. We found that sharing kai is a word for food, that sharing kai is a very important part of the activities that happen in the afternoon in this space. And so that's how we thought that we would use food in similar ways to how they use it, but turn it into, instead of being like a support activity, bringing food to the center of the activity in the afternoon. And organizing this kind of like party, kind of like playful food activity, and doing it in terms of what Paulo Freire describes as generative themes. So as presenting problems, and I use the word problems broadly, like the way Freire does, bringing problems or bringing activities that code or encapsulate some interesting ideas and interesting issues, and giving it to them, putting it in front of the community, and then letting them, in an open-ended sense, letting them decode it in their own terms. And the intention here was as an activity for imagining future scenarios. And we are well aware of other food activities that are used in computational thinking, such as the peanut butter and jelly sandwich to reverse engineer an algorithm to make such type of sandwiches. But we took these existing activities almost as a counterexample of what we didn't want to do. We didn't want to reduce computational thinking to the design of an algorithm, and we didn't want to do it in the terms that the PB&J activity does. And again, you can refer to the paper if you're interested in how we purposefully wanted to move away from that space. I'm going to close now with some points, like perhaps broader points that are beyond the specifics of the Crackers activity, which, as I said, the description of that activity and some thinking about it is in the paper. But maybe what we can learn from this type of exercises for the wider PDC community. So here are 6 points. The first 2 are perhaps more related to, of course, maker spaces and computational thinking, digital technologies spaces. We see we've gradually identified a problem with even with the name of maker space. We now identify, like others have done in the past, but we've seen it live happening. The consequences of bringing this kind of like Silicon Valley doctrine, very, very specific from Silicon Valley idea of tech, kind of like maker spaces that are defined by the technology around them, and also by this identity of maker, of who is a maker and what makes a maker as an identity, and immediately who gets excluded from that idea of Silicon Valley maker. And instead of that, we advocate more for making spaces. And by making spaces, we mean a few different things. The first one is spaces where things are made, and not only tangible, typical things made in maker spaces like 3D printed stuff and so on, but other like friendships or mutual learning and ako, the Maori word for teaching and learning. So making of many other things, but also a space that is made by the people who are constantly there. We would also love to see more innovative activities that are obviously meaningful, that are derived from the ground up and co-designed and prepared with people, as opposed to a lot of what we see these days in terms of off-the-shelf methods and off-the-shelf activities that get replicated. I mean, the extreme are these kind of like parachuting design teams that go into Africa, Latin America, Asia, and they bring their activities and their ideas of what is design and what is participatory design. And instead of that, developing with the community more activities, and also more activities that are more dialogic, that are in the Freudian sense of never being fully designed, never being finished, and always being put forward as propositions for people to complete or to shape in their own terms. We also see a lot of opportunities in designing generative themes, and again, we use generative themes as a phrase, the way Paulo Freire uses it in Pedagogy of the Oppressed. And searching the PDC library of previous conferences, there are only 2 papers, and one of them is this one, talking about generative themes. And I think that is a very, very important blind spot for the PDC community, not only in the space of learning, but also in the wider practices. The idea of what is a thematic fan and the craft of preparing a generative theme, the disposition in which the designer or the teacher or the adult or the organizer brings this theme and put it forward to the people, and what they can expect people to do with the theme. All of this, Paulo Freire was very careful to define and to think about. And I think we still have to catch up with those ideas from 50 years ago. I also see an opportunity, and I'm very excited to see strands in the PDC groups working with learning. I think that although this particular project has funding from education and learning, by definition, because of its nature, it's a very transdisciplinary project. And I see a lot of opportunities there as well in terms of bringing together learning and participatory design. Not only, as I said, as a way to work in formal and perhaps more importantly, informal learning spaces, but also in spaces that are not typically considered as a learning space, but to bring that learning lens to it. And I think the last point is perhaps the most important, is the importance, I think, of working in genuine partnerships. And also in even what a partnership means. To ground such definitions, I think, is important in the local knowledge, the local philosophies, the local culture, the local ways of working. Kia ora, thank you for listening. We want to acknowledge the Maker panel, the Maker group, the students, their parents for giving consent for them to participate and to be part of this project at Tekura Taura Manurewa High School. And funding for this project is from the TLRI fund by the New Zealand Council for Educational Research.